Red Bull has a super dangerous issue it needs to fix, as Max Verstappen gave the team its biggest kicking of 2026 so far at the British Grand Prix. The team's extensive upgrade in Austria a week earlier appeared to vault it forward as Verstappen split the Mercedes duo on the podium, but at Silverstone Verstappen had a tricky weekend, complaining of multiple problems aboard his RB22. He's got plenty of grievances with the performance of the 2026 Red Bull car and power unit, but he's now got a big safety concern with his car too. That's after Verstappen suffered a high-speed wing-induced incident for the second consecutive weekend. In Austria, Verstappen was pitched into the barriers in Q3 at the penultimate corner because of an aero issue on the rear wing, and the same happened during the British GP as he tipped into Stowe. This time his Red Bull at least came to a halt in the gravel rather than reaching the barrier. He didn't mince his words in the immediate aftermath, radioing in, among other things, "F*** this car," and angrily throwing his steering wheel out of the cockpit. Talking to media after the race, he said the Stowe exit was like Austria, but a different fault that's ended up in the same outcome. He said the rear wing is not fully attaching, so you lose a lot of downforce and spin off the track. Asked about his furious radio message, Verstappen explained, "At that point it's super dangerous because you can really hurt yourself. 2 times. I was lucky in Austria, I was lucky here, but that's why you get really fed up with it." Verstappen believes too many things go wrong right now, and with F1's next race at the Belgium Grand Prix less than 2 weeks away, Red Bull needs to find an urgent fix. These faults are happening on Red Bull's interpretation of the Macarena wing, popularised by Ferrari, which Red Bull introduced in Miami. Don't forget, Red Bull was already developing its version when Ferrari was publicly testing its headline-grabbing wing in pre-season testing, so it was a timing coincidence rather than a quick copy, and there are some key differences. Whereas Ferrari's wing rotates front to back, flipping around quite dramatically, Red Bull's rotates up and over from the rear, a simpler motion but resulting in a visibly greater opening. The aim of the wings is simply to provide greater drag reduction and more straight line speed when the car switches to straight mode. But clearly something is going wrong with that Red Bull rear wing when returning to corner mode, as the straight mode deployment zones just before turn 9 in Austria and Stowe at Silverstone. The rear wing isn't fully closing when the car's gone back into corner mode, leading to a sudden loss of downforce for Verstappen, who will have no idea if or when the rear wing will suddenly falter. F1 drivers have to have 100% confidence that their equipment will function when pushing for every last millisecond in a braking zone. And there's nothing a driver will want less than to be suddenly pitched towards the barriers at high speed. So you can fully understand Verstappen's anger. Red Bull team principal Laurent Mekies said Verstappen is right not to be happy and called it very unpleasant for a driver to be let down 2 rounds in a row in high-speed corners. Mekies said the team understands what happened in Austria and reckons this has been caused by a different failure. He promised Red Bull is going to review the full area to make sure we leave zero chance for that to happen again. Mekies said it was too early for Red Bull to conclude whether it's an issue with the Macarena wing concept. The team has all the options open, including rolling back to a previous pre-Miami specification of rear wing at Spa and parking the Macarena wing. Verstappen was 3rd fastest in sprint qualifying on Friday, but he fell back to 6th with another poor 2026 Red Bull start. His 3/10 deficit to sprint pole on Friday mushroomed to almost 8/10 in Grand Prix qualifying, as he even suffered a rare intra-team qualifying defeat courtesy of a stellar lap from Isaac Hadjar. Verstappen complained of a lack of straight line speed and deployment issues on his side of the garage on Friday and Saturday. If that continued, he said there would be no point to race like this on Sunday. Data from qualifying matches Verstappen's claim that he was running out of power in and out of Stowe, as his time lost to Hadjar is in all of those final corners, with Verstappen 4 km an hour down on Hadjar on the straight. That slender straight line speed deficit added to what Verstappen called a bad balance and led to Verstappen describing the Red Bull as very poor on Saturday. It's why Verstappen asked his team to make setup changes and swap power unit components in to try and resolve the issue and take the hit of a pit lane start rather than take up his 7th place grid spot. Asked why Red Bull didn't grant his request, he said, "I don't know, I wanted to start from the pit lane. They were maybe confident to fix it, which I was not." Mekies said Red Bull knew it would be unpleasant for Verstappen in the race with an unperfect balance, but starting 7th rather than from the pit lane meant a chance at a better result. He said he wasn't completely sure Verstappen could have been running third when he crashed if he'd started from the pit lane. He accepted Verstappen may have a different feeling and he's driving the car, but it's ultimately the team's decision. Even if Verstappen didn't crash, he felt a third place finish would have not have been deserved at all. He complained of having a terrible balance the whole weekend, and the race was exactly the same, which I already predicted. Mekies admitted the team had taken a backward step from the high of Verstappen's Austria victory bid. The Silverstone circuit exposed where the RB22 is still lacking in high-speed corners too, with Verstappen saying he was getting destroyed in them in the sprint race. And the low and medium speed corners weren't an easy ride either. Asked if he was fed up with everything, Verstappen said it would take a very zen person to be optimistic at the moment with what happened again this weekend. I'm sorry, but it's just like that. I need a few days to reset and try again. That's only going to add fuel to the fire of speculation over his future. Verstappen is believed to have a mechanism in his contract that would enable him to be a free agent at the end of this season. Now, there is no clear alternative for 2027, with Mercedes' lineup thought to be locked down and no other front-running team possessing the roster flexibility. But it is far from a given that Verstappen will race in 27 at all, given his dissatisfaction with the current formula. On whether Silverstone impacted his future of Red Bull, he insisted, "I'm not going to say anything about that. It's not fair to say anything about that right now." There were Pacific deployment issues hampering Verstappen at Silverstone that left him more compromised than usual. But even when fully functioning, Red Bull believes it still has a power deficit. It's why the team is so annoyed the first additional development and upgrade opportunities, ADWO rankings, has Red Bull as having F1's best 2026 power unit, while every other engine manufacturer has been given in-season development tokens, including rivals Mercedes and Ferrari. Those rankings are based solely on the internal combustion engine, not all the electrical elements, where Mercedes is believed to be clearly superior. Red Bull is challenging those results with the FIA, and a conclusion to the FIA's investigation into them is expected prior to the next race at Spa. There's currently nothing pointing to that challenge resulting in the ADWO rankings being changed. And the team is also fearing the large risk of being trapped in never being able to update its F1 engine. That's because the ADWO process does not force others to improve the internal combustion element that the rankings are based on, as they can instead elect to develop other areas. As Audi's Gabriel Bortoleto said about a change Audi introduced at Barcelona, it was an improvement that had no impact on power figures, as it was instead aimed at improving drivability. Mercedes brought a new specification of its engine to the Austrian Grand Prix, but that wasn't anything to do with the tokens it received for being judged to be over 2% off the benchmark Red Bull power unit. It was simply about reliability. If the internal combustion engine performance of Red Bull's rivals is not lifted dramatically, then that would set in stone Red Bull's benchmark status over further review periods, meaning a window would never open for it to be granted extra development opportunities. Mekies accepted there is a large risk there for Red Bull, so you are completely right in exposing that risk when it was put to him that rivals could game the system. The next ADWO window runs until July's Hungarian Grand Prix. Any change of status for Red Bull that would get it an upgrade opportunity would rest on other manufacturers not only having caught up, but also having overtaken it by at least 2%. And only Audi and Ferrari have so far used the ADWO opportunity to bring development steps to their power units. Once a manufacturer is awarded ADWO, it is allowed to bring changes for both the current season and the following one, so the gains have a long-term significance. Mekies has publicly kept faith that the ADWO result will be readjusted, but he accepts the consequences can be heavy if things do not go Red Bull's way. It means even if Red Bull can rectify the issue with its super dangerous wing, that still leaves a whole host of problems that might continue to frustrate Verstappen.